Welcome to the first episode of Revenue Mechanics, a show where we aim to equip listeners with the insights to build better buying experiences by bringing on some of the best strategic minds I can find, as I'm a passionate learner as well, to learn from these leaders, as I hope everyone else is. And I couldn't be more excited for the first episode to kick off with literally one of the best operators in the world with 11 exits, 12 unicorns, best-selling author, 4 times founder. So no luck involved in that track record at all. And now supporting founders and revenue leaders to build better revenue engines, build better buying experiences. Scott Leese, welcome to the show.
What's up, Sam? Thanks for having me, man.
Pleasure's completely ours, man. Great to have you here. So now your reputation speaks for itself. So I don't want to take up 15 minutes of our time asking about your life story and how you got started or anything like that. Even though I'm sure there's a ton of gold in there, we might touch on some of that stuff as we go. But I want to jump straight into what you're doing today, as I've heard you refer to yourself as the 0 to 20 guy, which you've obviously done multiple times over. What do you consistently see today as the biggest obstacles founders and revenue leaders are facing and coming across throughout this stage, and how you're helping them navigate that process?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges right now is that the traditional methods of go-to-market just simply don't work as well as they used to.
Yep.
So it's an undeniable fact that people don't talk on the phone as much. People don't answer cold calls the way they used to. Everybody's got, their phones on mute right now. Mine is over here on my desk to the side of me. So I just don't answer the phone the way that I used to. Everything is screened, right? So cold calling pickup rates have gone way down. And then cold email is overblown. We killed it a little bit with all of these spam cannon like tools that everybody was blasting off thousands of emails at a time. And now everybody's inbox is like a total mess, right? So the number one problem that everybody has is, how do I build pipeline in a world where cold emailing and cold calling, and even to some extent cold messaging on LinkedIn, doesn't work the way it did 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago? That's the number one problem that everybody has. They don't have enough pipeline right now. And they're trying to understand, like, well, what do I need to do? What are the things I can try? All right, that's number one. The second thing is they don't do a good job in the beginning of really having a tight ideal customer profile. So locking in their ICP. I talk to too many founders and sales leaders every day who are seemingly excited because their product can be purchased by anybody.
Yeah.
Right. And that's like you and I say, I'm looking at the map behind you of the world. And it's like you and I saying, you know what, we want to go fishing. Where do you want to go fishing? Right. And we're like, we could go anywhere. Okay. Not every spot on that ocean behind you is a good spot to go fishing. So let's narrow it down a little bit. Right.
Yep.
So they don't take the time to do some diligence here and think, all right, well, companies in this region, let's start regionally, of this size, whether employee size or revenue size, that face this problem, that have this role, that deal with these pains, right? And you should get that sucker as small as possible. You don't want this initial ICP that says, we deal with customers from 100 employees to 100,000 employees. That's not an ICP. Yeah. It's very different to do a deal with a company with 100 employees than one with 10,000 or 100,000 employees. It's a totally different process. So early stage startups, they can't run multiple sales processes like that when they've never even proven one before. So those are the two main things that I've seen the most in the last few months.
Yeah, and I've observed most of or very much the same as well through, I saw it at the very first company I worked with that operated reverse headcount modeling approach. They used it for low intent lead gen, X amount of dollars in ads, gets us X amount of leads, just make X amount of calls, book X amount of meetings, and then we'll magically make X amount of sales. And every time they try to scale that whole thing, it always fell apart. And a good friend of mine over here, I don't know if you know Graham Hawkins in the sales community of Australia, but talks a lot about this aspect as well, not only the landscape changing and obviously the way that people going outbound these days being less effective, but also this, I guess, evolution of what I call kind of like the ecosystem effect, where and I've heard you talk a lot about networks and the power of building networks to help facilitate pipeline. How are you guiding founders through this phase now that those traditional methods not only aren't as effective, but or in some cases killing companies? How are you leading them through that?
There's two fronts. The first front is the founder in particular needs to become a demand gen engine for the company. They need to be out in front. They need to be building a brand. They need to be creating content. They need to be getting eyeballs and brand awareness to the company. Right. So if you're the founder, Sam, I'm looking at your profile. I'll criticize you right now if that's okay.
Yeah.
Pick on Sam in real time. It's like Sam's got 3,200 connections on LinkedIn. Okay. That's nothing. You're a ghost. Nobody knows who you are. Nobody knows your company because of that. What you should be doing is doing everything in your power to grow the size of that network. LinkedIn maxes out at 30,000 connections. So you should have a daily KPI for yourself of, did I add this many connections every single day? Then you should start commenting on a bunch of other people's posts, especially creators who have a large following. So your voice starts to get heard by people in their feed. And then the phase 3 of that is you can start creating content on your own. You hit the podcast circuit, you do videos on LinkedIn, you do text posts on LinkedIn. It's sort of like a building in public type stories, things that you're going through. All of these things drive awareness to your company, and awareness breeds leads, leads breed pipeline, pipeline breeds deals. So that's number one.
Yep.
The second thing is the easiest way to gamify getting from 0 to $1 million in ARR is not by doing any kind of like cold direct outreach whatsoever, nor is it by hiring a bunch of salespeople to go out there and do this stuff for you. Founders forever have gone to their investors to get their first couple customers, right?
Yep.
What they've done wrong is they stop right there. So what they should do is go to their investors, go to their advisors, go to LinkedIn influencers or people well connected in a particular industry, and they should sign up about 100 different referral partners. Okay. And these referral partners, you should pay them somewhere between 10 and 20% of first year's ARR on any deal that they help you close. So what happens is I sign as a referral partner with Sam and his company. Sam comes to me. He puts an Excel sheet together of about 50 different prospects. Super simple. Name, company name, role, LinkedIn profile. And you're only sending me people I'm first degree connections with already. And remember, you're doing this across 100 different versions of Scott. Okay. You send me 50 people. I, on average, because of the size of my network, know probably like 3 or 4, maybe 5. If we're really lucky, somebody did this to me today and I knew 10 of them. I knew 20%, but that's an outlier. Count about 3 to 4%. Okay. Okay. Well, that means I opened up 2 or 3 opportunities for you today.
Yep.
2 or 3 opportunities extrapolated out across 100 different referral partners, 200 or 300 opportunities. If each one of those opportunities is worth whatever your ACV is, do the math, and you just opened up millions potentially in pipeline, more or less overnight, without having to cold call, without having to cold email, just getting warm introductions by people who know your prospects well enough to say, hey man, I don't know if you have this problem or not, but if you do, my buddy Sam has built this tool. Here's what it does. It solves this pain point. If you want to talk to him, I'm happy to make an intro. No pressure. If you don't want to talk to him, no worries. Let me know what you want to do. And most people who get that message, because there's inherent trust in the relationship, if they have any semblance of that problem whatsoever, they'll be like, yeah, sure. I'll talk to Sam. You say he's a good guy. I kind of have this problem. Bang. 0 to 1 million in no time flat.
Yep. And I've experienced that in reverse. Well, I started with the networking approach. So like this business has been operating for 4 months, and the first place I went was networks to get introduced to potential opportunities and work with, etc. And we hit working capacity within the first 3 months. Not that it's huge numbers, but we've reached just over 30K MRR, all from just the referrals of that network. Now doubling down, obviously doing shows like this and starting to double down on that founder-led approach, as big believer on that. But the benefit that I've seen from that as well, not only in the actual acquisition of clients and obviously deal flow, but the retention and quality of those clients as
That's
well
right.
has been like, I haven't lost a client yet. We've had a
Yeah.
100%
Yeah.
success rate. And
These, yeah, deals that come in through this manner tend to have a faster sales cycle, a higher average contract value, be less problematic from a customer service standpoint, and be
yeah,
stickier customers that last longer. So
yeah.
there's major advantages to getting these type of deals on board,
And
especially early when you're trying to get traction and things like that.
definitely. And referring back to that first ever company I worked sales in, where they ran that reverse headcount model, it was almost like a leaky bucket where we had to keep making more sales because the sales were coming through and then the clients were leaving because they were cold. We were taught, we'll say, a version of straight line theory, pressure based sales,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and needless to say, most people left the company within 6 months. And every time they tried to scale that model, again, the quality of clients, because they would scale the same message out in terms of make it sound too easy, make it sound like whatever they had was the greatest thing since sliced bread. The clients came in expecting that. That wasn't the case. Then they churn on the back end. Customer success has a bad time. So the overall experience, not just from a company perspective, but from a buyer's perspective as well.
Yeah.
Me on as an observation, as a young 24-year-old at the time, was just all net negative. Uh, from your side, what are buyers? Obviously, it's different sector to sector, but what are some of the commonalities of the way buyers buy today that you're finding the most effective with your clients?
I think meeting them where they are
Yep.
rather than trying to force them through your own internal process or your internal stages or whatever you've built in, you know, Salesforce or HubSpot, right? It's like you can't squeeze buyers into your med pick formula anymore. They have too much information on hand and available that they can go research. They're talking to their peers to get advice. They're not going to a static review site to figure out is Shapers any good. They're talking to their peers on LinkedIn or in some, you know, micro community that they're involved with, saying, "Hey, does anybody have any feedback on Sam and Shapers? Is this a good product or whatever?" So they show up armed and ready with more information. They know what they want. They know they have pain points. So you got to meet them where they are. So if a guy shows up to a call with me and he's like, "Let's talk about pricing," the old school way of training people would be like, "Well, I'm happy to talk to you about pricing, but let's back up a minute. I got to find out more about your business. I got da 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 da." Right?
Yep.
That's the old school way. Now you do that to a buyer now, and they're like, "Dude, I don't have time for this, man. Listen, I know all this other stuff. I've talked to 3 other different companies. I'm just trying to better understand your pricing because it's not listed on the website. I know the value of what you do. So hit me. I got 45 sellers on my team. Like, what am I looking at?" And if you don't give them that information or at least a range thereof, they're gone.
Yeah.
They're going to move somewhere else and make a purchase somewhere else. So that's one clear and obvious example to me. It's like you've got to meet people where they are now, not squeeze them through your sales process.
Yeah. And I've seen a few people talk about the shift in sort of that funnel mentality where a lot of people talk, are they top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, etc., and shifting that perspective to understanding their stage of awareness, like you said, meeting them where they're at. Have they just become aware of the problem and they do need that additional education to really understand what sort of solution works for them?
Yeah.
Do they already know the solutions that are out there, and are they, as you said, shopping around on price and looking to get the best opportunity for themselves? Being able to map a buying journey to that and meet customers where they're at sounds logical, but seems to be from the outside looking in for a lot of companies quite difficult because they can't get out of that old school mentality of wanting to move it through a conveyor belt process. Uh, how are you helping founders shift their mindset and look at things a little bit differently to start integrating systems like this where they can actually start meeting buyers where they're at?
Well, I think you need to throw out some of the old metrics that you used to care about so much. You know,
Yeah.
100 calls begets 50 pickups, begets 25 conversations, begets 12 meeting. It it doesn't work like that anymore. So changing the KPIs that are being measured and the things that are impactful and meaningful in your business, and being open to that, understanding that some things can't be measured all the time. Like, what is the direct ROI of your business starting this podcast?
Yeah.
You don't know. You can't measure that necessarily. You really can't, right? And I have a friend named Chris Walker, who's a marketing guy. He talks about this all the time. He's like, you know who he is? Yeah, he
Yeah.
talks about it all the time. He's like, does that mean people should stop doing it just because you can't measure it? No, we became too obsessed with attribution and measurement and data. It's like, data is important, right?
Yeah.
Data may be king still, or queen still, but data is not a god.
Yeah.
It's not a god. It doesn't rule over everything. Data can be manipulated and tweaked and changed to tell whatever story we want necessarily, right? So you have to be careful, real careful, about sticking to this old school ideas and methodologies. And I know that, you had success, let's say, before with this other way, but things change, man. Things change. And the changes are not necessarily bad. They're just different, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't evolve with it, you run the risk of having a lot of painful experiences and frustration and getting stuck. That goes for founders, VPs of sales, AEs, sales consultants, and fractional VPs of sales like me. I can't teach people to do things today the same way that I did them 20 years ago. It doesn't work. I have to change and evolve my business. And if I don't evolve, I'll go out of business.
Yeah. And if you were speaking to, say, a version of Scott that was currently a VP of sales in a company that was having these challenges with, say, their C-suite executives or leaders at the company that didn't want to look at that qualitative side, they were just so obsessed with the quantitative side. How do you navigate that bridge so that they do start to see, or what metrics and things do you look at to help them start to see, okay, maybe there's merit in what Scott's saying here?
Well, the first thing I do is I help them try to work on the messaging and the narrative,
Yep.
and how they try to tell that story and how to manage up with it. The second thing I do is I tell them, you have to be the one doing all this stuff. You have to actually execute on this stuff so they can see the results, and you can point to the results in yourself first. Then from there, now you start to work on some of these things with your team members, and you point to those results, right? So it's a sort of it's just baby steps, right? Can I frame the conversation appropriately so my boss doesn't shut me down immediately? Can I execute this stuff to show results that I can say, hey, here's a leading indicator that this might work at scale?
Yeah.
Can I get a couple of my reps doing this thing that starts working? That's a leading indicator that maybe it works for everybody else. And, at the end of the day, founders just want to win, right? And as long as what you're doing is working for the customers and for the business and for the team and the morale, they don't care at the end. They're just scared right now. They're scared, and inertia is our worst enemy, right?
Yeah. So it's leading by example, maybe doing some of those processes internally,
Exactly.
building the evidence pool, taking that evidence up.
Yeah. Like, let's say I'm a VP of sales and I have an idea to start hosting some customer dinners in Austin or Sydney or New York or wherever, right?
Yep.
And the CEO is like, no. We just need to get better at cold calling. We need to make more calls. Your team's only making 60 calls a day. They should make 100 calls a day, right? We've all been in those kind of environments before. Well, the first thing you do is you try to articulate why this customer dinner might work, right? How do I get 15 prospects and 5 customers to all go to this local steakhouse, have a chat, network, talk about things, right? And eventually we start to build some relationships with those prospects. Those prospects interacted with the people who were customers of ours who showed up. And one of those becomes a deal. Okay, we spent a couple $1,000s on a nice dinner, right? But we picked up 5 leads from it. We closed one deal. That deal was worth 50K in the first year. Our LTV is 5 years. It's 250,000 off of a $3,000 dinner. I'd fucking do that all day long, right? So you show that starting to work,
Mm.
and then maybe they let you try another one, and then another one, and another one, and then maybe they let reps do it in their patch, in their territory, and whatnot. So yeah, from concept to execution to demonstrable ROI and proof of concept, that's the path, I guess.
Yeah, and especially with a lot of those approaches as well, like not that like that's not something that we or my company specifically helps with, more the amplification of that through paid advertising. When someone has already found those systems and messages, because obviously paid ads, and I like the way that Chris talks about it. It's more like just gasoline on the fire. If you don't have the fire, then you're just pouring gasoline on the ground for no reason.
Yeah.
But if you've got the fire there, then obviously you can just amplify that message and get it to a wider audience by pushing that money behind it. But the side of it you're talking about as well, such as event dinners and building those networks and relationships, I've found not only can you maybe attribute one deal to that dinner, but the relationship that you built and the positive experience that you created 12, 24 months down the line could have 3,
Right.
4, 5 deals attached to it as well.
Yeah. And that person that was at that dinner might want to buy your product and be unable to for whatever reason.
Mm.
They might leave that company they're at now, but remember you and the experience and have a different boss that is supportive. And now they come back to you and be like, hey, Sam, I remember you from back at that thing. I couldn't purchase it then. I want to talk to you about it now. I'm in a new place. I think we could do something together. You got to have a zoomed out, long tail view of this stuff.
Yeah, it's and building that. It's almost like a spider web of once someone's in your world, just be there.
Yeah.
So when they're ready, raise the hand and
That's right.
ready to take the conversation.
Yeah, that's right.
So I know we're running short on time. Just one final question as a parting thought from yourself. Where do you see, say, the next, if we look short term, 12 months, and then the future of sales really heading, especially in that founder-led period?
I think founders are starting to catch on to this new founder led motion. I see it happening more and more and more. Um, I think they're getting better at it. On top of like adopting the mindset, I think the execution is getting better. So I think you'll continue to see that. That will mean you'll continue to see some contraction in terms of the availability and size of different sales roles that are open in certain orgs. I think those sales teams are going to start to get smaller and smaller. And that's before we even start talking about what AI might do and can do to all of this kind of stuff. So, you know, if you're in sales and sales leadership, you better work on your skill set now, because I think that AI is going to automate out a lot of terrible operators is what's going to happen. And the best of the best will be around for a lot longer. But, you know, if you're just kind of skating by right now and not paying attention to your network or modern sales tactics and trends, or, you know, developments in AI and different tools, you're in big trouble. And I don't think for very much longer you're even going to be able to open up pipeline, to be honest with you. So that's kind of where I'm thinking things are headed.
Yeah, and it's in a lot of ways it's already there, I guess. It's
already
just
here. You could argue it's here already, right?
Yeah, it's just playing a little bit of catch up to reality now.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, I know we're out of time, so thank you for jumping on. For anyone that does listen to this, and obviously I'll distribute this and share it back to you as well, where can they find you? Where's best to find your work?
Yeah, the easiest thing to do is track me down on LinkedIn. You can see all the different projects that I've got going on, from my consulting business to the Surf and Sales Summit to my venture capital firm that I launched. And if you want to check out any of those things directly, all the links are there. If you want to DM me, I respond to everybody who sends me a real human message.
No way.
So I'll get back to you. And well, you could use some AI, but like, let's just make sure the message, I believe it's from you. Let's put it that way.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. As I said, it's first episode,
Okay.
amazing leader to have on straight out the gate. So that I learned a lot through this call as well. And look forward to staying in touch and sharing your message to a wider audience.
Right.